Hey, strong people, Q&A time. This week's Q&A is on what I would have done differently if I could do it all over again. But of course, you probably read the title if you're even bothering watching this, so you already know that. So what I do differently is to not even mention what this week's Q&A is on. Anyways, questions like this are tough because obviously whatever I did got me to where I am now, and I have no regrets in that. But hindsight's 2020 or whatever they say. Some of the things I do differently is when I started, it was like uh, the common theme with all the information out there on strongman, which was even less than there is now, as I started in like 2008, was you just do powerlifting and then you do events on the weekend. So you and a lot of what was the popular part of powerlifting back then was geared powerlifting, so multiply powerlifting. So a lot of the information was very like conjugate. It was geared towards that, which works even less for strongman. Like training like someone would to be a good multiply powerlifter works even it's less effective for strongman than even just training like you would for raw powerlifting. So it was like I was constantly maxing on all this stuff and all these variations for no reason without actually practicing the specific events. And also, it's hard to stay in the right ballpark where you aren't just ego lifting or you're choosing lifts that you know, like, oh, well, I know I can PR in this, so I should probably do that as my variation this week. It doesn't work very well when it should have just spent more time practicing the specific movements. Like I know I did tons of box squats and all this stuff, and then I started like free squatting again or doing front squats, and I was horrible at them. This is not to say that any of those movements are bad. How I used them and how I interpreted the information for my specific goals was not optimal. That's my point. I think I worried about, so that's the main thing, is like not to actually like do more sport specific training, which there wasn't too much information on that in the first place. So I'm not going to fault myself too much for that. I was, reading up on what there was and how I interpret it and how people around me said this is how you do it. And I learned from there. I would rest a lot more, that's for one. But anyways, another thing I would change differently is making sure to train with a group. There's times where either I was lazy or it was just like, I'm tired of seeing that guy or this or that, but I can't express enough that it's so important to train with a group, at least for events on the weekend. And I think I did do a good job of that in one aspect where I did travel a lot to train. I can't emphasize how important enough it is to train with a group, and there's just so many more groups and legit gyms with strongman now than there was about 10 years ago. Of course, you can find them at strongmanmat.com. So just making sure to keep that core people, and then training partners and doing that instead of trying to do a lot of it on my own. I also wouldn't worry about body weight as much. I mean, I've had so many fats. I'm just, it's like, well, the only class in this contest coming up is 231, so I better weigh 231. No, I should have just gotten stronger because getting fatter didn't really help much. It just really didn't help. Sorry, I should really put my phone on airplane mode, not my plane, before I do these because they're popping up on my screen and I can see them, and it's really distracting. So if I do it all over again, I'd put my phone on airplane mode. But just not worrying about that or thinking you have to do it all tomorrow, and not worrying about your body weight, worrying about actually getting stronger and being a technician of the movement. I feel like there's a couple movements which I was that I spent a lot of time getting technical with, and others I didn't. For whatever reason, log press, I really honed in on my technique because I think it's one of those things you can't really, especially if you're not the biggest guy, you have to be very technical in it. Whereas like the deadlift, all I'd worry about is, did I do more reps at this weight, or am I doing more weight in my training? Not, is my back kind of fucked after this? Is that, or did I actually use my hamstrings? Am I actually using my glutes at lockout? So I try to focus kind of how I do on my training now, because it's necessity now that I'm over 30 and have, all these chronic injuries I've had over the years. It's like in my deadlift training, once I feel to a point where, once I get to a weight or I do like one rep where it feels like, okay, if I did one more, I'm definitely not, it's not going to be clean. I'm not going to, it's not going to look pretty. I definitely felt my hamstrings not engaged very good on that rep. I just call it, because that's the only way I can get where I don't fuck myself up again. So just being very technical on all of my lifts is something I do differently. I'd also make sure, going back to all those other steps, is I think I'd invest in coaching. Not that I feel for a lot of competitors and even myself, I know this because I had I'm like, well, if I hire this coach, A, it costs money, B, like, then if someone else is coaching me, then people won't think I know what I'm doing, which is ridiculous. The best way you can learn what works for yourself is to hire someone that you think or does know more than you, and any good coach should be open to explaining on why this works and why that doesn't work. Working directly with coaches or just good friends of mine and bouncing ideas off of them help me. That's where I've gained most of how I then apply to my clients now. It's actually a really cheap way of kind of like an internship. I know Chad Wesley Smith did my programming for nationals in 2014, and I learned a lot from that. And I also felt like I had a good training cycle, not just from the aspect of how I performed, or that it was like some way different than anything I was doing. It's that it allowed me to just focus, okay, it's Tuesday, I gotta go do this. It's Thursday, I gotta go do this. And it was just one less thing to worry about. And when someone else has written it out, it's a lot easier to go, oh, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that, instead of actually just focusing on doing the task and being prepared for that big competition. So I definitely invest in yourself. And when you think about the money, I can't think of all the money I spent doing stupid shit, entry fees, traveling to contests, freaking dumb supplements, new gear, etc. The amount that it would cost to pay a coach, and not to mention the time and how important success in these events for me is, it's silly that I wouldn't invest that in myself instead of spending my money in other ways that I know wouldn't have had as big of an effect and made me learn things slower than I did. The other thing I do is make sure to take time off. You get in this weird point as an athlete, especially when you think well, I'm kind of I'm going to be right there at these contests. Where in 2012, I think I competed 9 times. It was really dumb. And even training for nationals in 2014, at that point, or no, 2013, I didn't do 2014. I think I said that earlier when Chad did my nationals training for 2013. Clarify that. Anyways, you get to this point where it's I have to go do this show. Once you're kind of getting to somewhat of a high level, you feel you're one of the best, amateurs in your division or whatever. You get to this point where it's well, if I don't go to this nationals, I'm going to now what's going to happen? 6 months from now, I'm going to have to try again to win. God, there's no way I could have, I know I can't do this in 6 months. Or, if you're going for your pro card, it's like, well, I have to do this contest. It's like, no, there's always another chance. And if you don't feel like you're going to be ready again in like 6 months, what's the point? But like, I think I would have been really smart to have skipped, not just to mention the frivolous shows I did along the way. It's like, oh, well, this will be fun, or my friend's going to be there, so I'm going to go travel do this contest. Not to mention all the damn money and it costs to, go compete at the Arnold or stuff. But like, I think it would have really prolonged my career if I would have been a little nicer to my body and taken time off. Like, okay, I'm going to take 3 months off of doing events, or I'm going to skip out on this national so I can build up, or this Arnold so I can then be ready for this nationals, etc. Instead, you just kind of like got to run it in the ground. Now is the only time I have when I'm still able to lift now. And some of the long-term effects of really pushing it make it harder to, if I wanted to do it now, then it wouldn't work. It's like, it's silly because you're an amateur athlete. You're under no obligation to do a contest. It might seem like a big deal, but in reality, there's going to be like 5 people or 5 other competitors like, damn, you're not going? That's all it is. I think there's some athletes that do it really well. And also, if a contest, you're like, that doesn't look any fun, I wouldn't do it. I kind of went over this in the last on when you shouldn't compete. But it's smart to kind of be strategic on when you do things and actually letting your body heal up. Like when I was training for that nationals, I had some weird problem with my glute and hamstrings where they just wouldn't engage anymore at all. And I still kept training. I'm like, well, I'll just make sure I deadlift with, all quads and low back. And that doesn't really work well. And I went into the last event, which was a stone. I'm like, I was, still strong enough to do some of the stuff. And it was a car deadlift. So I'm like, okay, it's a car deadlift. So that doesn't really hurt as much as like, I couldn't work up to a 500-pound deadlift without shooting pain. That should be a sign to maybe it's time to chill. But I felt like I had to keep going, or else all this stuff, like I always wanted to transition this into some sort of career, because that's all I would think about. And when I was at my actual job, it's all I would actually do. So I'm like, I have to get this done now. So it did work out, so maybe I did make the right decision. But from a pure like competitor standpoint, it would be smart to take some time off if I can't deadlift like 455 without like feeling like just shooting pain down my whole body. And then I went into the last event, which was a stone carry and load. It was like a 250 stone, but it was the end of 2 days. I just got back from China, and I remember trying to load that stone. I think if I would have placed it, I just felt like I had nothing left, because at this point, sure, like my hamstrings and glutes didn't work at all. I mean, look at some of my old photos. I had no ass because everything just shut down. And so I was like strong enough, and like my back was strong enough, my quads, everything else was strong enough to compensate in most of the events. But then there gets to a point where I was so ran down that I needed to use my whole body to even lift a 250-pound stone. I remember just trying to stand out of the bottom of the hole with a 250-pound stone, and my body's just like, nope, not doing this. Fuck you. You've been an asshole to me. So my mind was like, no, body, you ain't doing any more work. And I didn't load it. I think that made me get like 5th or 6th overall in the contest, when I possibly, if I would have taken top 3. So that's how it goes. It would have been smart to actually take some time off. It's a lot different scenario than if you were a professional athlete and you have sponsorship obligations where they pay you to go to these contests. And this is not all professional athletes. I'm talking about a true, you make your living off the sport, professional athlete, not just because you have a pro card. They pay you money if you place, like your livelihood's dependent on it. But that's kind of how I felt, was that my livelihood was going to be dependent on it, because I wanted to like not work at my shitty old job. But anyways, I'd be nicer to my body. Comes down to the main thing on what I would do differently. I'd pay for coaches instead of new neoprene and lifting straps. Not that I paid for those either. And I'd be more technical on the lifts and train more sport specific versus acting like it's for I'm training for like, doing some weird thing. And just reach out to more people in my community and make the effort into that, and invest more in myself, and and not act like this is the only chance I have is the next coming show in order to prove whatever the hell I wanted to prove to myself this whole time. I don't know where that came from, but that's the more mental thing that would be best to talk about on a future podcast, which you can listen to on iTunes, or I post them here as well. But those are some of the things I do differently. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too long, even though I know I did. And next time I'll put my phone in airplane mode because I keep getting all these emails popping up saying this, and this person did this. Thanks for watching. Of course, go to startingstrongman.com. Go to store.startingstrongman.com for all your lifting needs and ebooks, etc. Go to strongmancoach.com. Sign up for coaching for myself or someone on the team. And stay strong people.